You woke up this morning to an alarm. You checked your phone. You got dressed for a job that starts at a specific time, ends at a specific time, and pays you in numbers that appear in an app. Somewhere between 9 and 5, you probably answered emails you didn't want to answer, sat in a meeting that could have been a message, and counted down the hours until you were allowed to stop. For almost all of human history, none of that existed. No jobs, no schedules, no bosses, no emails. And yet, people still had to eat, still had to survive, still had to fill every single day with something. So what did they actually do? Not in some vague they hunted and gathered way you learned in school, but hour by hour. What did a normal Tuesday look like for a human being 50,000 years ago? The answer is stranger than you'd expect, and it's going to make your 9 to 5 look a lot worse by comparison. Let's start with the biggest myth. You probably picture early humans in a constant, exhausting struggle to survive, scraping for food from sunrise to sunset, one bad day away from starving. That image comes from farming societies, not hunter-gatherer ones, and it's mostly wrong. In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Marshall Salins studied hunter-gatherer groups still living the way humans had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. He expected to find people working non-stop just to stay alive. Instead, he found something almost absurd. Adults spent roughly 15 to 20 hours a week getting food. Not a day, a week. The rest of their time was theirs. Salins called this the original affluent society. Hunter-gatherers didn't own much, but they also didn't need much, and what they did need, they could get in a few mornings of work. Everything else was leftover time. So what filled that leftover time? A lot of it was rest. Actual deliberate, unbothered rest. Researchers found that adults regularly napped in the middle of the day, not because they were exhausted, but because there was nothing urgent enough to stop them. No manager was going to walk by and ask why they were lying under a tree. A big chunk of the day also went to something that sounds almost pointless by modern standards: talking. But at night, around the fire, the topic shifted almost entirely to stories, myths, gossip, jokes, tales about ancestors and animals and the origins of the world. Storytelling took up nearly 80% of nighttime conversation. This wasn't idle chatter, it was how knowledge, values, and history got passed down without a single written word. Every fire was a classroom, a newsroom, and a comedy club at the same time. Then there was making things, which took up far more time than people assume. A stone tool doesn't just appear. You have to find the right rock, test it, strike it at the exact right angle, and often fail dozens of times before you get one you're happy with. Add in weaving baskets, sewing hides, carving wood, and repairing whatever broke yesterday, and a huge portion of the day went into maintenance. Childcare looked completely different too. There was no daycare, no school, but there was also no single overwhelmed parent doing it all alone. Anthropologists call this alloparenting. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, and unrelated adults all took turns watching and teaching children. Nobody was doing this out of obligation with a calendar. It just happened, constantly, because everyone lived within shouting distance of everyone else. Gathering wasn't just walking around picking things up. It required an enormous specific memory. Which plants were edible this month but poisonous last month? Where the water source moved after the rains? Groups of women gathering together, talking the entire time, kids tagging along and learning by watching. It wasn't isolated labor, it was closer to a long, useful walk with your friends that also fed everyone. Big game hunts might happen every few days, or even less often, and when they succeeded, the meat was shared across the entire camp. This sharing wasn't just kindness, it was insurance. If you shared your lucky kill today, the group would share theirs with you next week. Nobody starved because of one bad hunting trip. The group absorbed the risk together. There was also art, and a surprising amount of it. Cave paintings in places like Lascaux involved scaffolding to reach high ceilings, mixed pigments made from ground minerals, techniques refined over generations. Someone spent real, deliberate hours making something that had zero survival function. It didn't feed anyone. It didn't keep anyone warm. It existed because humans, even back then, wanted to make things that were beautiful. Play mattered too. Adults regularly engaged in games like wrestling, often late into the night. They were just what people did because it felt good, and the night was long. A normal day? Wake up with the sun, No alarm required. A few hours gathering food, with other people, talking the entire time. A rest in the heat of the day, an afternoon making tools or teaching a child, and then, as it got dark, the fire. Stories, jokes, sleep. This wasn't paradise, but the day-to-day rhythm wasn't the grinding non-stop struggle you probably imagine. Here's the strange part. We built entire civilizations, invented incredible technology, and generated more wealth than any point in human history, and somehow ended up with less free time doing it. Ancient humans didn't have jobs. They had a rhythm: food, rest, craft, story, sleep, repeat. And somewhere in the last few thousand years, we traded that rhythm for a schedule. The next time you're staring at a clock counting down the minutes until you can leave your desk, remember that for the vast majority of human history, nobody had a desk to leave. They just lived, made things, told stories, and waited for the sun to go down.